I can tell you, I feel 100% that it's real. Her doctors feel 100% that it's real.
Let's begin now.
Is everybody going to believe it? I mean, no, I'm sure they're not. I've heard everything from she's making it up, she just wants attention, to, oh, you're full of demons,
Yeah.
or she must be schizophrenic.
Or DID itself just doesn't exist.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know,
Or to everyone has DID, sort of.
yeah, no.
You've told me this before, but would you share with them the moment that you that it kind of clicked with you that this was real?
I would say it was the moment that it completely solidified for me was the first time that Bug came out in front of me. And Bug is a 5-year-old alter. And it was the most eerie thing for me because it was like being transported back in time. Because it was exactly Katie at 5 years old. And I don't mean like, oh, it reminds me of, or because it's her and she was acting 5 years old. No. This was, she was saying things I hadn't heard her say in 10 or 12 years, however old she was. I hadn't heard her say since she was, around that age. The gestures, the tone of voice, the pronunciation of certain words, every single detail. In fact, about a month ago, we watched a home movie and hadn't had it out in years. One video that was on there on this disc was of Katie at that age talking. And it was like, I'm like, that is exactly what Bug is like. Exactly. It was so weird. It was so weird. And I mean, that's what I mean about nobody remembers those details. Yeah. To me, it was like when Bug was talking, it was like, oh yeah, I forgot she said that way, or oh, I forgot she used to pronounce this word. I mean, it was little things, but it was all the little things.
Yeah,
it was so weird. I can't even describe it well enough, but you couldn't, I don't know how you could fake it. This was just, it was so weird. I don't know. It's so amazing how the mind can do the things that it does.
Like freeze me at that age, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
I just didn't develop anymore.
Yeah. Well,
that part of me didn't develop anymore.
And that's the thing about DID is people think, okay, it's all these different people in one body. Yeah. And really what it is it's an aspect of your personality that kind of branched off and developed in a different way, specifically to cope with a certain thing that at the time you weren't able to cope with, or weren't able to handle all the time. So it had to be kind of separated off to be dealt with, so that you could cope with everything else day to day.
What were some signs that I had DID growing up that, like, obviously we didn't put together?
Oh, yeah. So these are, like, things that at the time we didn't think were DID symptoms, but, looking back at it through the lens of the knowledge that we gained of how DID develops. When Katie was little, she was in about first grade, and we took a trip out of town for a family member's funeral. It was an older family member. It wasn't somebody, like, young or something that, it was somebody she didn't know super duper well. And she didn't go to the actual funeral, but she went on the trip with us. And
I don't remember this at all, by the way.
So, yeah. And
How old was I, like 5?
5, yeah. 5 or 6. You were in first grade. And so, yeah. So when we came back, she was suddenly, I want to say it was Emily. I can't remember now 100%, but I think she said her name was Emily. And we thought, okay, Katie's an imaginative kid. She likes to write little stories and stuff. She likes to dress up and do those kinds of things. So we just thought, okay, now we have Emily. And Emily's going to, once in a while, she's going to pretend to be Emily, whoever Emily is. Which would have been fine if she did it for a couple of hours and then quit. But we had Emily for a week, exclusively Emily. If anybody else called her another name, she would correct them and say, no, I'm not Katie, I'm Emily. And even at school, she came to her teacher and said, I'm not Katie, I'm Emily, and I don't know how to do any of this stuff. I don't know where my cubby is. I don't know where the bathroom is. I mean, it was like, it really had annoyed the teacher to the point that she said, listen, you've got to get her to stop doing this. It's really disruptive. And again, this was a kid that had never got into a confrontation, never, never defied adults, real rule follower. And I'm like, and her little brother was getting confused. He was like, where's Emily? And I'm like, no, it's not Emily. It's Katie. This is a pretend. And finally I said to her, it had gone on night and day for like over a week. And we had kind of said, oh, come on, come on, Katie. Yeah. No, I'm Emily. I'm like, it's getting old. Come on. Nope, still Emily. And finally I sat her down and I said, listen, you cannot be Emily. You have to be Katie. You have to be yourself. Mm-hmm. This is confusing everybody. It's annoying your teacher. It's disrupting your life. You can pretend to be Emily a little bit, like in the afternoons after school or something, but this day in, day out, this has to stop. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, I don't want to be Katie. Katie is boring. Like in the third person like that. And I'm like, well, honey, you're not boring. You're not boring. Mm-hmm. You have all these fun things about you. And she just kind of looked at me like, but I don't want to be Katie. And it kind of like if, and looking back, I always thought about that after we knew that she had DID. And I thought maybe that was an early exposure of an alter, that then learned that there were consequences for being open and out as an alter. Mm-hmm. And what I learned from her therapist, the one that is a specialist in DID, said that a lot of alters, when they first reveal themselves, have a really negative experience. Yeah. And a lot of times people don't know that it was an alter, but something out of character happened. They think, this person was acting really ridiculous or whatever. The alter experiences negative feedback. And so when they are out, they'll pretend to be just the same person. Mm-hmm. They'll hide. They'll still come out when they're triggered, but they will be, they'll try to camouflage it. They'll try to pretend to be Katie. One more example. Mm-hmm. When she was, I want to say in like second or third grade, maybe, 3 or 4 little girls came over and they were having a sleepover in her room. And in the morning, they were all freaked out and Katie was all embarrassed and upset because evidently she had sat up in the middle of the night and had an entire long conversation where she was some spooky man. And I'm just thinking, okay, I will never understand kids, first of all. And they're all freaking out. And I'm like, girl, this is so silly, girls. So just tell them next time you have a sleepover, before you go to sleep, that you might talk in your sleep. Other kids were like, she wasn't just talking in her sleep. Because it wasn't even her. It seemed like a whole different, like a grown-up, scary man. So I don't know how scary he actually was, but it did not seem like a little kid to them.
Also, I recently heard this story from Jake, and I remember it now, but I'd forgotten about it for years, and I wonder if you remember it, and I wonder if you thought it was out of character at the time.
Okay.
I don't know how old I was when this happened, but I was over at his house, and I guess I remember this vaguely. We were playing, and her older brother was copying her, like repeating everything she said, and she kept saying stop, and he wouldn't stop, and then Jake got triggered out because she kept saying stop, and he didn't stop, and he didn't know what was happening except that he wouldn't stop, and he slammed his head against the brick wall. And then her grandmother spanked me. I remember that I didn't understand why I was getting bent over the stove and spanked, and she accused me of hurting brother. Yeah. But I was like, no, I didn't. Like, I had a vague memory of it happening, but felt like I didn't do it. Mm-hmm. And I thought she was plotting against me because I peeled off some of the wallpaper in the bathroom.
Oh, I remember you saying that was the real reason why you got in trouble. I didn't remember what the incident was that got you in trouble, but I remember the wallpaper excuse.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, and
I'm surprised you don't remember because it was like really out of character for me to do something violent.
Well, yeah, and I wasn't sure that you did anything violent. I figured it was just some kind of a scuffle that ended up, he got hurt and you probably didn't intentionally hurt him. You look at all these things in hindsight, and if there's just one thing, you can say, okay, one thing, could be not, write it off, whatever. But, I mean,
there's just so many.
There's so many. And,
like with
none
Jake
of them are
and
just...
Danny.
Yeah, Jake and Danny were... I thought friends of hers. She
Yeah.
thought friends of
Yeah,
hers. She
for a long
described them as
time.
friends. You know, they'd have text conversations and stuff that she'd tell me about. And I got to being like, who are these guys? You
Yeah.
know, where do you see them? And where, you know, oh, well, you know, just in the neighborhood and just around, you know, and it was really vague. And I got to trying to look through her phone and look, you know, all these things to try to figure out who these guys were. And I'm like, I don't think these are real people. And I thought, that's sad. Is she making up friends at this age? I mean, this was like, she was like 12. Like, is she making up friends? That's so sad. And
I mean, I didn't have a lot of friends, but I wasn't that
you had
desperate.
some friends. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like, I just thought, well, maybe she doesn't have a boyfriend yet, isn't really ready for that, but some of her friends have boyfriends, so she wants to make it or
By the way,
whatever.
Jake was never my boyfriend. Just
No, I was
No, I'm
just
just
trying
telling
to
the
think,
people at
why
home.
did she make people
I know,
up,
I'm just
you know?
clarifying for the people at home
Yeah.
in case they start to think
Well,
weird
I was just
things.
thinking, why at this age would she have imaginary friends?
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, okay, maybe she knows they're not real. I had to talk to her about it, and she got so upset and cried and was like, why do you never believe things when I tell you them? Why, you know, Mom, you just don't trust me. You don't believe me. I just don't understand. I mean, she was so totally hurt and shocked. And that was the last reaction I expected. And then I was
that.
really worried. I'm like, what do I do? What do I even do with
Yeah.
a 12-year-old that's imagining people? And you have to understand, too, nothing else in her life. It wasn't like she was hearing voices or seeing
Right.
things that weren't there when, you know.
And then Dream World also, which I've talked about in the Inner World video. I would go there starting when I was probably 10. And Jake and Danny were there. And, you know, I knew that somebody else came and took over my body. So I told my brother and other people, like, I can switch bodies with people. Because I guess I knew that they were taking over my body. And I thought, well, I go in a different place. I must be in someone else's body in Dream World. So, like, do you remember me talking about Dream World and stuff?
I remember finding things that you had written down about it in your room, and I thought you know, she liked creative writing. I thought, okay, maybe this is just a story that she's writing. And then I noticed later on some of the Jake and Danny's names being in some of the stuff, and I'm like, maybe this is some kind of social experiment or
Oh, I forgot about this too. I had another friend who used to come over to my house a lot. I remember one night she had told me that there was a ghost that was possessing me named Charlie, and that he told her all these things, like these horrible things that happened to him, which were things that had happened to me and I didn't know it at the time. And she was telling me about these things that had happened. I don't know what happened to Charlie. I guess he integrated because I've never heard of him. But
there was something that I remember about something like that. Something like Charlie. Yeah.
yeah. And she went to school, you know, and told everybody about it, and I was really, really upset because I thought we were just playing a game or something. I didn't believe that. I don't know what I thought. I was like maybe 9 at the time. And I thought it must be a game because, like, why would she tell me that some ghost took over my body? I didn't believe her, and that these horrible things happened to him. And then she went to school and told everybody that I was possessed with this ghost named Charlie, and all these horrible things happened. And I told her that didn't really happen. So she took it as, you lied about being Charlie. And what I was trying to say was that you're lying about Charlie coming out in my body. So then she went and told everybody that I lied about Charlie. And I was devastated, like, and I already didn't have many friends. Like, these people only knew me as the quiet kid. And now I'm the quiet kid who makes up stories about being possessed. Like,
Yeah.
that did not help me at all with
I
my
remember
social
that.
status.
Now that you say, when you said Charlie, I was like, there was something that happened that was upsetting you with something around this Charlie and
Yeah.
ghost. And yeah, that's another one I hadn't even thought of in years.
Yeah, we could go on and on probably.
Yeah, things come back.
Yeah.
When you start telling stories about things that happened, and then some little thing will get mentioned, and we're like, wait a minute. Oh, that's why that happened. Yeah. Wait, whoa, you know, so many things. And like I said, sometimes they're little things. Looking back, you know, it's kind of like, wow, that explains a lot.
Yeah. I think we're going to wrap up the video. Do you have anything else you wanted to say or any other thoughts?
I mean, I'm just really proud of everything that you've done, and Ryland, I'm just proud that you have come so far, I guess.
Yeah.